What existed before God? And what if the God of the Bible wasn't really God at all, but a fraud? There's another higher secret God that the church doesn't want you to know about. We're going to take a look at a lost gospel where Jesus reveals that the God that's worshipped by billions isn't the true God at all. It exposes who really created him, what existed before the creation of the world, and the truth about a hidden realm of light that's infinitely beyond heaven, and how the key to this realm exists within you right now. See, everything you've ever been told about God, reality, your own soul, it's been a lie. This is psychological warfare, and the ultimate prison is your own mind. Because if you ever truly realize what you are, you wouldn't believe in God, you'd become one. This book reveals that your body itself became a kind of trap, causing you to forget what you really are. But some of us remember. And almost 2,000 years ago, a secret book was written to reveal how to remember a truth that's so powerful, the church literally killed to keep you from finding it. But it's a light that they can never extinguish, because the most forbidden secret in history is not buried in the earth, it's buried inside you. So let's dig it up. My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge, and I'm here to make enlightenment go viral. And today we're unlocking one of the most explosive secret texts in history. It's called the Secret Book of John, and it was hidden for almost 1,600 years. So if the church tried everything in its power to obliterate it, how do we even have it? Well, in 1945, near the tombs of Egypt, someone cracked open a clay jar that was buried in the desert, and inside was a stash of forbidden texts that were untouched since the 4th century. Now, these secret books belong to a group that we now call the Gnostics. These were early Christians, but they were rebels, mystics, and philosophers who believed, get this, that salvation did not come from worship, but from knowledge, gnosis, the direct experience of truth. They taught that the divine spark, it's already inside you, and that the God worshipped by Christians today is not the true God at all. For that, the Gnostics were hunted, their books were burned, their teachings were erased, but not completely, because some of their books survived, buried in the Egyptian desert. And among them was the Secret Book of John, hidden away by those who knew that one day we'd be ready. And now, here you are. This isn't just another YouTube video, it's a revolutionary transmission of banned knowledge, and you're part of the rebellion making it go viral. Ready to join the revolution of the mind? Let's discover exactly what this hidden, forbidden gospel reveals about you. So what exactly does this book say? Well, our story opens just after the crucifixion. The disciple John is dejected. He slips away into the Judean hills, and he's alone, confused, basically having a full-on existential meltdown. He's wondering who really sent Jesus, what even is existence, and where are we gonna go when we die? Then suddenly, reality itself glitches and the sky cracks open. A radiant light fills everything, and John falls over flat on his face, shaking. But there's a voice that speaks, and it's Jesus, but in divine form. He tells John not to fear. Be not afraid, I am with you always. I am the Father, the Mother, the Son. I have come to teach you about what is and what was and what will be, in order for you to understand the invisible world and the world that is visible. Okay, hold on here. The Father, the Mother, and the Son? Yeah, right away, this secret book reveals we got the whole Trinity thing completely wrong, completely leaving out the Mother. Jesus is about to spill the kind of tea that would make your Sunday school teacher pass out. John lifts his head, and his heart's probably pounding, ready to receive these secrets. Now, this is not some kind of parable or story for the crowds. This is top-level gnosis, secret knowledge for those with the ears to hear. See, Jesus is about to reveal that the universe's creation wasn't exactly how you heard about it in Sunday school. There's a hidden God far above the Creator in Genesis, and a cosmic drama that starts with a perfect oneness and ends with us stuck here wondering who we are. All right, are you ready? John was. The Savior's lesson begins, and it starts before the beginning. Yeah, pre-creation. Not in the beginning, but before that, before time, before space, before anything at all. Jesus is about to rip the veil of existence and reveal hidden history of the universe. So what was there before the beginning, before the God of the Bible even existed? Well, Jesus begins by unveiling to John the ultimate mystery: who is God really? Well, it turns out, beyond the familiar creator deity, beyond all the worlds, there is something known as the One, an utterly transcendent source. The One is not the God of the Bible, not even close, not an old bearded guy on a throne, not even a he or a she, but the infinite, indescribable oneness. Jesus says, "The One is indescribable, for no one can put any words to it." This is not a God who needs a temple or a priest or a freaking choir. The One isn't a being, it's being itself. And Jesus emphasizes how utterly beyond comprehension the true God is. The One cannot be seen, eternal, inconceivable, perfectly free from corruption. So this One is basically infinite light, and it doesn't need worship or sacrifice or want to destroy a city if you get horny. No, it's not the divine in the way that's described in the Bible. It's beyond even our highest concept of God. Jesus says, "The One rules all. Nothing has authority over it." Jesus even goes on to say, it's not right to think of it as a God or as like God. It is more than just God. More than just God. Think about how mind-blowing that is. Imagine putting that on a church pamphlet. So what does this hyper-intelligent, genderless mind of light do all day? Well, it thinks. About what? Itself. Nothing exists, after all, except it. The One receives nothing from anything. It simply apprehends itself in its own perfect light. Okay, so that might sound kind of boring, but it's not, because in Gnostic myth, thoughts don't just stay inside your head. No, when you're the One, your thoughts become beings, like full-on divine intelligences. And the first of these thoughts, the first thought that the One has, a goddess. His self-aware thought came into being. She stood before him. Her light reflects his light. Now, she's called Barbelo, and she's everything that the modern church is terrified of. But what is she exactly? Well, think of Barbelo as the primal mother. But this is an aspect of the One's mind turning inward to know itself. She is the universal womb. She is before everything. She is Mother, Father, First Man, Holy Spirit, androgynous, eternal realm. So Barbelo, like the One itself, is beyond gender. It's androgynous, the Mother, Father. And through Barbelo, the source begins to express itself because the One looks into Barbelo, into that brilliant mirror of itself, and generates a new emanation, a spark of light that's like a child of Barbelo. This is what's called the autogenes, meaning the self-generated, essentially the Christ, the divine logos coming into existence. The Father gazed into Barbelo. She conceived and bore a spark of light, who has blessedness similar to hers. Okay, but how exactly is all this happening? Remember that thoughts become personified as beings. So let's break this down. The One is pure mind. Barbelo is the first thought of that mind. And Christ, he's the thought thinking about itself. So when it says the Father gazes into the Mother and the Son was produced, it means the one mind had a thought and began to think about itself. Do you see how cool the secret knowledge is? This is way more intricate and layered than just let there be light. So the text calls this child of thought the autogenes and the Christ, the one and only begotten Son of the One. Not exactly Jesus per se, but the cosmic Christ principle, the divine mind that will later manifest as Jesus. So now you have the Father, the Mother, the Child. That's the real Trinity. No bearded old guy or magical Holy Ghost, just mind, thought, and awareness of self. Okay, but what happens after this Trinity is generated? Well, since thoughts become beings in this realm, through the power of the autogenes, or Christ, thinking about itself, four great luminaries arise. Now, these aren't angels with harps. These are powerful beings of light known as Eons. They're named Harmazel, Auroriel, Davathai, and Alalith. And each one is a living thought form of light that contains the highest spiritual truths. With Harmazel comes grace, truth, and form. With Auroriel comes conceptualization, perception, and memory. With Davathai comes understanding, love, and idea. And with Alalith comes perfection, peace, and wisdom. Now, the Greek word for wisdom is Sophia. Keep that in mind because that's going to be very important in a second. But the point is that this is beyond heaven and angels, before the world, essentially the mind of God that's unfolding and ordering itself. This entire realm of thought as light and beings is called the pleroma, which means the fullness. But then something wild happens, because out of this divine cascade of organizing thought comes a human, but not the humanity that you know, not flesh and blood, not born into sin, not molded out of dirt by a grumpy desert god with too much time on his hands. This is the perfect divine human archetype. Now, its name isn't Adam, It's Adamus, and in some texts he's called the Eye of Light. Adamus is a Greek word that means indestructible, and Adamus is the divine idea of human. In other words, it's the original template or perfect blueprint of humanity that exists in the Pleroma. The One gives Adamus unconquerable intellect and the power and authority to rule with Christ, not under him, with him. This means humanity was meant to be on the same level as Christ. Adamus says, because of you, the universe came into being, and it is to you that all will return. Okay, so this declaration that all things ultimately go back to the source is crucial. It's basically like the mission statement of the entire cosmos, spoken by our primordial higher self, meaning that knowledge is buried deep within us. Our origin, according to this secret gospel, isn't dust or clay or dirt. It's this perfect human. But if our origin is the perfect human, born from cosmic light, why are we stuck here? If we were meant to be divine, what happened? Who sabotaged us? Why did the lights go out? Well, the plot thickens, because with light comes shadow. And if thoughts become beings, a nightmare is about to be born. Okay, one of the Eons of Light is called Sophia. Remember her? Her name means wisdom. And Sophia is an emanation of the One's wisdom. And she's an incredibly powerful being. But she had an idea, a little rebellious, unapproved, unauthorized idea. She wanted to create something of her own without consulting her partner or the One. All right, what the hell does that mean? Well, in the Pleroma, the eternal light realm, all creation happens in balanced male-female pairs. Now, a lot of people get tripped up here, so keep in mind, this is not in a literal gendered sense, but as a cosmic principle of harmony. It's metaphorical, but it means that everything flows in unity and balance. But Sophia, she says, screw the rules, I'm doing this solo. So think of it as a rogue thought in the divine mind, an urge to create apart from the harmony of everything else. It happened that the realm, Eon, wisdom, Sophia, began to think for herself. But since Sophia created from imbalance, her experiment goes off the rails, and what she produces is terrifying and looks like something H.R. Giger would make. Sophia saw what her desire produced. It changed into the form of a dragon with a lion's head and eyes flashing lightning bolts. All right, this entity is nothing like the divine beauty she imagined. This is Yaldabaoth, and none other than, guess who? The God of the Bible, the one who demands obedience, the one who claims to be the one and only God. And in this secret book, he's the villain. He's the first of the Archons, an abnormal, incomplete being born without the One's light. Remember, thoughts become beings, so Yaldabaoth is like a dark thought, not a source of light, but of shadow and nightmare. Okay, but let's pause for a second, because Sophia usually gets a bad rap here. Like, damn, you really kicked off this whole nightmare scenario? But I don't see it that way. Think about it. Before Sophia's act of creation, reality was just silence, what the Gnostics called Psyche, literal eternal stillness, just the quiet infinity of perfect being. Sounds peaceful, sure, but also boring as hell. In fact, think about it. Nothing happens in perfect silence. It would quite literally become hell. Sophia broke the silence with her voice of creation. Yeah, she created disharmony, but it's the imperfection of existence that makes it interesting. The ups and downs, love and loss. She introduced the very possibility of life, difference, movement, drama, our awakening. Without her so-called mistake, there wouldn't be a story to tell. This whole cosmic mess, as dark and as painful as it is also the greatest art project in eternity. But nonetheless, when Sophia sees what she created, she panics. She basically tries to hit Control-Alt-Z by hiding this being away in a cloud in a realm far below the Pleroma. Now imagine being born to a mother who immediately stuffs you in the basement and locks the door. So Yaldabaoth grows up isolated, and he doesn't even know anything about the higher worlds. He has no clue that there's a whole Pleroma above him. All he knows is this chaos that he's in. And boy, does he get delusions of grandeur. The text says that he steals some of the power of light from his mother. Yaldabaoth is the chief ruler. He took great power from his mother, left her, and moved away from his birthplace. He assumed command, created realms for himself with a brilliant flame that can continues to exist even now. So Yaldabaoth is now this being of darkness that's also mixed with the power of light. The text even calls him the dim ruler. Alone in this void, he uses that power to create a realm in his own image. Basically like a deranged toddler with Play-Doh, he starts creating inferior imitations of the real divine patterns, basically like heaven on a dial-up modem. Yaldabaoth spawns archons, rulers, authorities to populate his new domain. He creates a whole entourage of lesser gods and demons. For example, Yaldabaoth makes 12 chief archons with faces of animals, which could be a reference to the 12 signs of the zodiac. He also produces 7 rulers to govern the 7 heavens, which could represent the 7 classical planets. And you thought Mercury retrograde was bad. Eventually, he's got 365 demons, one for each day of the year, to fill out his creation. He's basically like a mad architect building a distorted copy of the Pleroma, a cosmos that is neither light nor darkness, but dim. It's a half-baked world, built out of his darkness mixed with the light he stole. It's a kingdom of shadows. Yaldabaoth, being ignorant and lonely, starts believing he's the top god. See, he's never seen anyone greater than himself. So what does he declare? The text is pretty clear. He is blasphemous through his thoughtlessness. He said, "I am God and no other god exists beside me," because he didn't know where his power came from. Yeah, so he literally thinks that he's the one and only. And we've heard that line before, right? Think in the Bible. The Gnostics are telling you loud and clear, Yaldabaoth is the so-called God from the Bible, but he isn't actually God, just the first being in history to have a God complex. Jesus even points out the irony of Yaldabaoth's arrogance. See, Yaldabaoth also says, "I am a jealous God and there is no God but me." But Jesus points out a problem. By doing this, he admitted to his demons that there is indeed another God, for if no other existed, whom would he be jealous of? Exactly. Yaldabaoth basically outs himself as an insecure fraud. Little does he know, Sophia and the higher eons are watching all this go down. They're appalled at what he's doing, but they also realize something. Yaldabaoth may be a mistake, but he has a spark of Sophia's divine power in him. And that light is basically the battery for this hellish simulation he's creating. Well, the higher realms, they want that spark back, and to ultimately save whatever light gets trapped in his creation. So they give Yaldabaoth a quick glimpse of the reflection of the higher realms. All right, why the hell would they do that? Let's find out. The story goes that one day, Yaldabaoth and his archons hear a voice from beyond, the voice of the higher realms echoing down into the darkness, and the image of the first man appeared. The first man, he appeared in the form of a human being. So this is Adamus. Remember the divine pattern of the perfect human, the being that rules on the same level as Christ? Well, when his reflection appeared, the entire realm of shadow shook. All of the realm of the chief ruler quaked. The foundations of the abyss moved. The archons are basically stunned by this brief vision or reflection of a higher reality. And so what does Yaldabaoth do? Well, playing creator, he decides to make a creature in imitation of the divine realm that he dimly perceives from the patterns of the light he stole. Why does he do this? Well, other Gnostic texts, like the Apocalypse of Adam, tells us it was because he wanted to create slaves. I did an entire video about that, you should go check it out. So Yaldabaoth has a meeting with his minions and says, let's create a man after the image we saw. Notice this is parroting the Genesis line in the Bible, let us make man in our image. They want to copy the form of the perfect human, Adamus, that they glimpsed, hoping to harness its power for themselves. Now, this is a key twist. In Genesis, God makes man in his image. In the secret book, the fake god Yaldabaoth makes man in another image, a pre-existing divine archetype that he barely understands. So humanity's form is divine, but the one shaping it here isn't. And so the first human is created, Adam. But keep in mind, at this point, Adam still isn't a physical being. This is like a mental image of Adam, an immaterial being. But the problem is that the being just lays there, lifeless and unmoving. And here's where Sophia and the other eons pull the ultimate con on Yaldabaoth. So they see their chance to get back Sophia's stolen light and uplift this new creature. And they trick the demiurge. How? They whisper to Yaldabaoth, breathe your spirit into the man's face so that he may move. Okay, again, why the hell would they do that? See, the Eons of Light are more powerful than the Archons, but if they descend into their dark realm, there's a chance they could become stuck or corrupted. In fact, take a look at Sophia. Even Sophia can't reach the highest realms of the Pleroma anymore. Why? Because Yaldabaoth stole some of her light, so she's stuck in this middle realm known as the ninth sphere. But if the Eons trick Yaldabaoth to put his light into his creation, that light can destroy it from the inside out. Yaldabaoth, being arrogant and clueless, does exactly that. He infuses Adam with his own power. Yaldabaoth blew some of his spirit into the man. That spirit was the divine power of his mother. So in giving life to Adam, he literally spits out the last bit of the source in him, the light he stole from Sophia, and it goes into us. The trap worked flawlessly. The text says, the human body moved, it grew powerful, it shone. For the first time, the Archons see their creation alive, and not just alive, but radiant. And guess what? He's way smarter than any of the Archons. His understanding was far greater than that of those who had created him, greater even than that of the chief ruler himself. Because Adam is based on the divine patterns of the eternal realm and just had the power of light breathed into him, Adam basically just out-leveled his creators without having to farm any XP. Think of it like an AI program that becomes smarter than its creators. Yaldabaoth's reaction? Rage. Envy. All the demons are envious because Yaldabaoth gave Adam all his power, and they realize they can't destroy Adam. His light is indestructible, remember? So they go for plan B, bury him alive. They took him and cast him down into the lowest depths of the material world. Essentially, they exile Adam into a lower realm, aka Earth, and then create a material body to contain and trap his light. The Archons cobble this new material body together from earth, water, fire, and wind, pretty standard, but also mix it with matter, darkness, desire, and the artificial spirit. The text says this all became a tomb, a new kind of body. A tomb. Let that sink in. According to the Gnostics, your body wasn't built as a temple, it was built as a cage, a tomb of flesh to trap divinity. But here's something really cool. Remember that the perfect human is called Adamus? Well, why did the Archons call the man they created Adam? Well, there's a secret hidden here. While Adamus is the Greek word for indestructible, Adama is the Hebrew word for dirt, ground, or earth. So the physical Adam is related to the finite material world, or Adama, while the spiritual Adamas is from the indestructible eternal realms of light. Pretty cool, right? So the Archons bind Adam in this meat suit, surround him with distraction, ignorance, and mortality. The text says, those thieves bound the man in it and chained him in forgetfulness, made him subject to dying. And so all of us, we're born into that same condition, forgetting where we came from, forgetting what we are, that we were beings of light, but now we're trapped in bodies. But how can we return to the realms of light? Well, that light is still within, and Sophia, or wisdom, isn't done helping us. All right, so there's Adam, now in the lowest region of the material world, effectively our earthly realm, and the Gnostics considered Earth to be hell, the abyss. But the Archons need to keep this human blinded to his own power. So they create a fake paradise. You know it as the Garden of Eden, a kind of simulation like a spiritual matrix. They put Adam there, but it's described as a place of deception. The rulers took the man and put him into paradise. They told him to eat freely. Their food is bitter. Their beauty is corrupt. Their food is deceit. Their trees are ungodliness. Their fruit is poison, their promise is death. They even give Adam access to the tree of life, but Jesus reveals that it's actually the tree of their life, which in this twisted version is more like the tree of enslavement, symbolizing the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The text says, its root is bitter, its branches are dead, its shadow is hatred, its leaves are deception, the nectar of wickedness is in its blossoms, its fruit is death, its seed is desire, it flowers in the darkness. Those who eat from it are denizens of Hades. Darkness is their resting place. So clearly this tree of life was a trap and was actually the tree of death. But what about the tree of knowledge? Of course, they forbid Adam to eat from it. But why the hell would they put the tree of knowledge in there to begin with? To answer that question, we have to talk about Eve. And this is where the story gets crazy. Now, the higher realms of light, they aren't going to leave Adam defenseless. The mother father sees Adam. now a luminous soul, thrown into forgetfulness and trapped in matter. So the text says, he sent down from his good spirit a helper for Adam. Out of his great compassion, a light-filled Epinoia emerged, and he called her Life, Zoe. All right, there's a few awesome secrets to unpack here. First, he sends down a light-filled Epinoia to help Adam. All right, so what the hell is that? Well, Epinoia means purposeful thought. It's the power of basically self-reflection, imagination, insight. You know, the exact thing you'd need to wake the hell up if an evil, megalomaniac, lion-faced dragon guy just made you forget what you are. Second, remember the rule of Gnosticism? Thoughts become beings. So this Epinoia of Light is personified as a woman called Life, or Zoe, because Zoe in Greek literally means life. So who is Zoe and where does she come from? Well, in another Gnostic text called On the Origin of the World, it's revealed that Zoe is actually Sophia's daughter sent to help out Adam. Pretty cool, right? But it gets even cooler, because when Zoe manifests in the material world, she's called Eve. And guess what? The name Eve in Hebrew is Chava, and it means life. There are secrets all over these books. Eve equals Zoe equals life equals Epinoia equals divine self-reflection. So she's the light of awareness planted inside the human experience. Zoe is kind of a divine rescue plan for humanity. She lives in all of us and represents our ability to reflect on our own divine nature. So what happens when Zoe, or Eve, shows up in the garden? She aids the entire creation, working with him, restoring him to the fullness. She taught Adam about the way he could ascend. In other words, Zoe reminds Adam of his real origins and shows him the path back to the pleroma. But Zoe isn't walking around in a material body. This is happening in Adam's consciousness as the voice of spiritual intuition inside him. So at first, Zoe is hidden inside Adam. The light-filled Epinoia was hidden in Adam so that the rulers wouldn't know about her, for Epinoia would repair the disaster that their mother, Sophia, had caused. So at this point, Adam and Zoe, they're one, and Adam is starting to remember what he is. This is why other Gnostic texts, like the Apocalypse of Adam, say that Adam and Eve were originally a single divine being, because Zoe is Eve. So the real Eve is this inner enlightenment, a spark of Sophia's power hidden in Adam's soul. As long as Adam listens to that inner voice, the Archons are in trouble. So the Archons realize that, hey, Adam is starting to remember what he is. So what do? Well, they try to perform a kind of psychic surgery on him to remove Eve. The chief ruler tried to remove her from his ribcage, but Epinoia cannot be captured. All right, so he tries to cut her out, but he couldn't do it. So what does he do instead? The text indicates that Yaldabaoth was able to remove or reduce the Epinoia in Adam by trapping that power in the body of a woman. The chief ruler did remove a portion of his power from Adam to create a person with a woman's form. All right, so now we have Adam and Eve as two persons in the material garden. What does this mean symbolically? Well, Adam represents the mind and Eve represents self-reflection. So as long as those two powers are separate, the mind can't reflect on itself and remember what it is. But here's the thing, Yaldabaoth's plan wasn't completely successful, because even if these two powers are separated, they can still remember if they start to work together. The text says, Adam saw the woman standing next to him. The light-filled Epinoia immediately appeared to him. She raised up the veil that dulled his mind. He sobered up from the dark drunkenness, and he recognized his own counterpart. Okay, so now Adam and Eve, they're in separate bodies, but they're still partners. So they're in this kind of half-awake state. Now, this is where the tree of knowledge comes in. Remember, they were forbidden to eat from it? And we asked, well, why the hell would they put it in there to begin with? Well, another Gnostic text, On the Origin of the World, which I also did a video on, has the answer. They didn't put it in there. It was actually Eve. Okay, not the material Eve, but her higher form as Zoe. I know that might kind of sound confusing, but think of it like this. Just like Adam is the material version of Adamus, Eve is the material version of Zoe. So Adamus and Zoe are like the divine blueprints, or the higher selves, the real ones, and they're both working from the top floor of the divine tower, trying to wake up their lower halves from the basement. So Zoe slips the red pill into the matrix, the tree of knowledge. It's packed with Epinoia of Light, the power of self-awareness. It's not a trap, it's a freaking rescue beacon. So the Archons, they didn't put it there. And remember what the text says, that Epinoia can't be captured, so they couldn't get rid of the thing. So according to the Bible, the Tree of Knowledge was a kind of test to see if Adam and Eve would obey. But Gnosticism is like, no, it's because they couldn't get rid of it. The best they could do is lie about it and tell Adam and Eve that if they eat from it, they'd die. It's spiritual propaganda. But remember in the Bible, the serpent tempts Eve to eat from the tree? Well, the Gnostics flip the script again because in the secret book of John, Christ himself causes them to eat. Yeah, you heard that right. And if this is blowing your mind, make sure you hit like and subscribe because this isn't just a channel, it's a revolution. And we're making the knowledge that was hidden from you go viral right now. And every like helps spread this information across the world. And if you want to help out even more, become a member for exclusive content. Check out my books and downloads on inner transformation. Links are in the description. All right, so Jesus reveals that he was in the garden, but not as a serpent, but as an eagle. Jesus said, I appeared as an eagle perched on the tree of knowledge in order to teach them and raise them up from the depths of sleep. He even directly says, I caused them to eat. So Christ is essentially saying, hey guys, eat the fruit, wake up. In mainstream Christianity, Eve is the first sinner, but according to Gnosticism, she's the first liberator. Her higher self planted the tree, her material self ate from it, Christ backed her up, and she gave some to Adam. All right, so what happens? Well, their spiritual eyes open. They realize they're not in paradise. They're in a trap. They realize Yaldabaoth is a fraud, and the text says they realize they're naked. And no, it's not about them suddenly needing pants. This is symbolic. They realized they were naked of knowledge. They became conscious of their ignorance. So Yaldabaoth, the control freak, is totally furious about his orders being defied. When he discovers Adam and Eve have woken up a bit, he goes completely apeshit. Not only that, but he realizes that this Eve lady is a huge problem. So he sets his sights on her to try and limit her power. He tells man to be her master, essentially embedding patriarchy and misogyny in the world. And then he casts both of them out of paradise, dressing them in heavy darkness. Remember how they realized they were naked? Well, here Yaldabaoth clothes them in darkness, meaning the Archons tried again to smother their newfound knowledge with even more ignorance, fear, and forgetfulness. But it doesn't stop there. Barbelo, the great mother father, sees that Yaldabaoth is about to target Eve. And so, when she saw what was going to happen, she sent assistants to remove divine life from Eve. In other words, she removed the true light and life from Eve, leaving behind the material body. Okay, so seriously, no joke, what I'm about to say is disturbing, but it's in the text. So, trigger warning, the demiurge sexually assaults Eve. Yeah, you heard that right. The secret book is quite frank. Yaldabaoth essayed Eve. She bore 2 sons. All right, so what's going on here? Well, Yaldabaoth sees Eve as a huge threat, and she's essentially undoing his creation by letting the light in. So he figures if he pollutes her light with darkness, he can keep humanity in ignorance. But Barbelo already removed the light from Eve. So Yaldabaoth assaults just the material aspect and can't touch the light. So according to the secret book of John, Cain and Abel are born from the material version of Eve being assaulted by Yaldabaoth. According to the text, from that point on, sexual intercourse has persisted, meaning humanity began reproducing in the physical way, trapping soul after soul in matter through the Archon's design of fleshly birth. Yaldabaoth's plan is to keep multiplying bodies and funneling spirits into them to keep humans busy with desires and distractions generation after generation. But there's more to this story, because Adam was able to use a kind of spiritual intercourse to counter Yaldabaoth's plan. So Adam has intercourse with the real Eve, the higher Eve, the light-filled version, and they bore a son named Seth. Now this is absolutely critical. It's so critical, in fact, that many scholars call the Gnostics who wrote the secret book of John Sethians. So why is Seth such a big deal? All right, think about it. Cain and Abel weren't the real sons of Adam and Eve. They were the sons of Yaldabaoth and the material version of Eve. But Seth, he was the true union of Adam and the higher Eve, the light of life itself. And so on a symbolic level, Seth represents the reunion of the forces of the masculine Adam and the feminine Eve, meaning it represents the ability of the mind to self-reflect and realize what it is. And according to the Gnostics, and even the Bible itself, we're all descendants of Seth. So this means that humanity has the masculine and feminine principles fundamentally embedded within themselves, within each individual person. And if we unite them by looking within, we can realize our Divinity, but there's still a problem. The text says, the chief ruler, though, forced the humans to drink from waters of forgetfulness so that they might not know their true place of origin. I know this guy is a huge dick, right? In other words, the realization of our true origin, it's not automatic. It can be covered by ignorance. This means that we have to do the work to unite our inner opposites and self-reflect to realize the truth. And even though Yaldabaoth tried to keep them in ignorance, it didn't last forever. The children of Seth, they started to wake up. When the chief archon learned that their mental abilities surpassed his, he wanted to put a stop to their thought, but he did not know the extent of their mental superiority, and he could not stop them. In other words, this means we're always more powerful than the darkness of ignorance, but it's up to us to activate that power. Yaldabaoth tries multiple times to wipe out or enslave humanity completely, but the true light outsmarts him at every turn. The Secret Book of John says, Yaldabaoth eventually came to regret everything he had created. He decided to bring a great flood upon creation, upon mankind. So according to the Bible, God floods the world because humanity is becoming sinful. But according to the Gnostics, it's because humanity is waking up and refusing to worship him. According to this text, the descendants of Seth, they actually hid in a cloud of light. Symbolically, this means that those who had the light of knowledge were saved from the flood of ignorance. Salvation in Gnostic terms is awakening, remembering who you really are and where you come from. When Christ came as Jesus, he essentially spread the message that the kingdom is within you. Of course, mainstream religion, servants of the archons, tried to silence and twist that message. But Christ's message didn't die. It just went underground into texts like the Secret Book of John and was passed around among mystics and seekers. And now it's no coincidence that it's reaching you. This knowledge is back, and we're spreading it like fire through the algorithm. The Secret Book of John says, I entered the prison. The body is the prison. And I cried out, rise up, remember what you have heard. Trace back your roots to me, the merciful one. Guard against the demons of poverty and chaos, those who would bind you. Awaken, stay awake. Rise out of the depths of the underworld. Christ then tells John to take this secret information and spread it across the world. I have told you everything now so that you can write it all down and share it with your fellow spirits secretly. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. Instead of dusty scrolls passed around reaching a handful of people, through the viral power of social media, we're reaching millions. The Great Awakening is here right now, and you're part of it. Now, it's okay if your mind is reeling. You might be feeling a mix of, what did I just hear? And also, somehow this rings true deep down. So that's usually what Gnosis feels like. It's like remembering something that you'd forgotten. But what does this really mean for you personally? The important thing to remember about all this is that it didn't happen literally. All of this is a kind of coded metaphor that reveals an even deeper secret. This is about the very structure of your soul. Ready for the biggest twist? Here it is. Gnostic stories aren't just sci-fi fantasy theology. They're maps of the human psyche. Depth psychologists like Carl Jung were obsessed with the Gnostics. He even wore a Gnostic ring. Why? Because their stories map out the transformation of the soul, the mind. In other words, the characters in these stories represent forces within you right now. That's why it resonates so much. So what is this story really saying about you? Well, the one, it's the source of all reality, but it also represents your higher self, the divine core of your being, the pure I am presence. Carl Jung called it the self with a capital S, the totality of the psyche that transcends the individual ego, and it's experienced as a God within. It's your wholeness, your true center. Now, Barbelo, the first thought, the mother, this is like the superconscious creative imagination of the higher self, the ground of archetypes. Barbelo is the part of the psyche that holds the blueprints of the mind itself. She's the inner voice that channels the powers of the one into forms you can understand, like dreams, symbols, and intuitions. And the eons, all those emanations of light and concepts like understanding, life, truth, etc., they're the various aspects of your own higher mind. They form the pleroma, or fullness, or wholeness of your potential psyche. Now, this is inherent within you, but it's often unconscious. It's up to us to make it conscious. And Sophia, or wisdom, well, she can be seen as your own consciousness venturing out, trying to understand itself by creating an image apart. This is like when our ego splits off from the higher self. Now, Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, is the ego itself, more specifically, the ego inflated with ignorance that's cut off from the light. Yaldabaoth is the personification of the ego and shadow complex. Your ego says, I am the real self, there is no self besides me, but of course, really, your higher self exists above it. Just like Yaldabaoth says, I am the only God, there is no other besides me, when the one exists above him. Yaldabaoth is the blind spot of your psyche that arrogantly thinks it's the whole show. The archons, they're the negative thought patterns, complexes, and societal programs that arise from the ego and shadow self. They correspond to what Jung called autonomous complexes, or the forces of the personal and collective unconscious that hinder individuation. Think of archons like inner predators: fear, greed, anger, ignorance, conformity, all the forces that keep your mind in the box. They rule our lower nature. The secret book even says the archons implanted a counterfeit spirit in us, an imposter self that confuses and deceives. And Adam and Eve, they represent the opposite aspects of our psyche. In other words, Adam and Eve aren't real people. They represent the mental functions associated with the left and right hemispheres of the brain. When your rational mind, Adam, and your intuition, Eve, work in harmony, they produce Seth, which is enlightened consciousness, the awakened self, the child of mind and wisdom. But the ego, remember, splits them. It tries to keep your rational mind and intuitive wisdom apart. Patriarchal culture, stemming from archons, often suppress the Eve aspect or make it look like it's weak. Intuition, the feminine insight, that's an echo of Yaldabaoth making Adam rule Eve. Why? Because a union of your reason and intuition is dangerous to ignorance. When Adam and Eve support each other, the full picture emerges. Now, always remember, this has nothing to do with literal gender. It's a metaphor for the opposite energies within me, within you, within all of us. We could just say positive and negative, or left brain and right brain, etc. Now, Christ is that messenger of your higher self. In other words, it's the voice within you that encourages you to seek truth. Now, that could arise as a burning curiosity or a gut feeling that what I've been told by the world isn't the whole truth. That's the Christ spark urging you to take a bite of the fruit of knowledge. But it's not apart from you, it is you. It's all within you. So taken together, this entire story is about you. You are a divine soul of the one who, through the adventures of consciousness, or Sophia's fall, ended up with an ego that thinks it's the boss, Yaldabaoth. That ego spun a false world of thoughts and identifications, archons in your head, that trap and split your inner divine spark, Adam and Eve. But hidden in you is the intuitive memory of your divine self, Epinoia, Eve, which, if activated, can join with your conscious mind, Adam, to produce an awakened self, Seth, the real you, whole and free. And the Christ spark is the part of you helping all along, through sudden insights, through teachings, symbols, trying to get you to eat from the fruit of knowledge, to realize what you are. This is the forbidden knowledge that was suppressed. And so why did the early church freak out and label these texts as heresy? Well, because if people believed God is within them, and the so-called Almighty is a blind fool, that undercuts the entire power structure of external religion and empire. The God that mainstream religion has been bowing to is a cosmic fraud, an ego projection. The secret God that religion never wanted you to find has been there all along within you. You are the secret God. You are divine and you are eternal. To know yourself at the deepest level is to know God. But now you know, and the veil has been torn. The time of spiritual amnesia is over. The hidden gospel is spreading again, person to person, mind to mind, a viral awakening. So spread this revelation, live it, and never forget you are God, and so is everyone else. But what if Eve had a secret daughter? That's exactly what a banned book called The Reality of the Archons says. A daughter that was so powerful that she burned down Noah's Ark and made God run in fear. So who was she? Why was she so dangerous? Watch my video all about Eve's secret daughter. It'll blow your mind.